Most people wake up thinking about results. They think about what they want to achieve, how fast they want it, and how it will look when they finally get there. The promotion, the recognition, the applause, the sense of arrival. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Results don't wake up and go to work. People do. And when we confuse outcomes with effort, we start chasing shadows instead of building substance. The work is the only thing that exists in the present. Results live in the future. They are delayed, unpredictable, and often influenced by factors far beyond our control. The work, however, is available to us every single day. It's the email you send with care. It's the conversation you prepare for. It's the skill you practice when no one is watching. When we obsess over results, we give our power to things we cannot fully command. When we obsess over the work, we take that power back. There's a quiet danger in result-driven thinking. It makes us impatient. We start asking, why isn't this working yet? Instead of asking, am I doing the work well? Impatience pushes people to take shortcuts, to compromise values, to rush the process. And shortcuts might create quick wins, but they rarely create lasting trust. The irony is that the very obsession with speed often slows us down, because anything built too fast without a strong foundation eventually collapses. The people who build things that last understand something deeply human. Progress is rarely visible in the beginning. Mastery looks boring before it looks impressive. Repetition doesn't feel glamorous, but repetition is what creates reliability. Showing up consistently, especially on the days when motivation is low, is what separates professionals from amateurs. Professionals don't wait to feel inspired. They show up because it's who they are, not because of what they might get. When you fall in love with the work itself, your relationship with failure changes. Failure stops being a verdict on your worth and becomes feedback on your process. Instead of asking, did I win? You start asking, what did I learn? That shift keeps people in the game longer. And the longer you stay in the game, the better you get. Longevity, not intensity, is what creates real excellence. There is also a profound sense of freedom that comes from focusing on effort over outcome. Outcomes create anxiety because they live in uncertainty. Effort creates calm because it lives in choice. You may not control whether you're rewarded today, but you always control whether you show up with integrity. You always control whether you do the work with care. That sense of control builds confidence, not the loud, fragile kind, but the quiet kind that doesn't need constant validation. The most trusted people in any organization, any community, any field, are not always the most celebrated. They are the most consistent. They are the ones who do what they say they will do, even when it's inconvenient. Trust is not built through grand achievements. It's built through small, repeated actions done well over time. And trust, once earned, becomes a result that no metric can fully measure. Obsession with results often leads to comparison, and comparison is a thief of focus. When we measure ourselves against others, we lose sight of our own path. We start chasing someone else's finish line instead of committing to our own journey. But when we become obsessed with our work, comparison fades. The question shifts from am I ahead of them to am I better than I was yesterday? That is a comparison that actually fuels growth. There's also meaning hidden inside the work itself, not in the applause that follows, but in the contribution being made along the way. Meaning comes from knowing that what you're doing matters, that it helps someone, that it solves a problem, that it moves something forward. Results might bring excitement, but meaning brings fulfillment, and fulfillment is what sustains people through difficulty, doubt, and delay. So if you feel stuck, if you feel impatient, if you feel discouraged by the lack of visible progress, don't ask where the results are. Ask how the work is going. Ask if you're showing up with intention. Ask if you're honoring the process, because when the work is done right, consistently and honestly, the results have no choice but to follow. Get obsessed with the work, not because it guarantees success, but because it builds character, and in the long run, character is the most reliable result you will ever have. There is a quiet trap that many driven people fall into without realizing it. They believe that if they just achieve the result, everything else will fall into place. Confidence will arrive, fulfillment will follow, motivation will stay, but results are temporary. The feeling fades faster than we expect. And when it does, we're left asking, what now? That question exists because we built our sense of progress on outcomes instead of on the work that creates them. The work, by contrast, has permanence. It is something you can return to every day, regardless of yesterday's success or failure. When you anchor yourself to the work, you no longer depend on external validation to feel forward motion. You measure progress by how honestly you showed up, how much care you put in, how willing you were to improve. That shift is subtle, but it changes how people experience pressure, purpose, and perseverance. Obsession with results often creates fear. Fear of failing, fear of falling behind, fear of being exposed, and fear is not a sustainable fuel. It may push you for a while, but eventually it burns you out. Obsession with the work, however, creates resilience, because when the goal is to do the work well, setbacks don't feel like threats. They feel like part of the path. You expect them, you learn from them. And you continue. Think about how trust is built in relationships. It's not built through promises of big outcomes. It's built through consistency, through showing up when you say you will, through listening, adjusting, and staying committed even when it's uncomfortable. The same principle applies to your work. People don't trust you because of what you achieved once. They trust you because of how you work all the time. Reliability is a result of process, not performance. When people become obsessed with results, they often start managing appearances instead of reality. They polish the image, not the substance. They focus on looking successful rather than becoming capable. But image is fragile. It cracks under pressure. Substance, on the other hand, grows stronger when tested. Obsession with the work builds substance. It builds skills, judgment, and character. Things that don't disappear when conditions change. There's another hidden cost of chasing results too aggressively. It narrows our thinking. When the only thing that matters is the outcome, creativity suffers. We stop exploring. We stop asking better questions. We choose the safest path instead of the right one, but when the focus is on the work, curiosity returns. You experiment, you refine, you allow yourself to think long-term, and long-term thinking is where innovation lives. Being obsessed with the work also changes how you experience success when it does arrive. Success stops feeling like relief and starts feeling like confirmation. Not "I can finally breathe," but "this makes sense." It feels earned, not lucky. And because it's rooted in a process you understand, you're not afraid of losing it. You know how to rebuild because you never abandoned the fundamentals that got you there. There is dignity in doing the work well, even when no one notices. In fact, that's where the strongest sense of self is built. When you know you're doing the right things for the right reasons, applause becomes optional. Recognition becomes a bonus, not a requirement. This kind of internal alignment creates calm in environments that are otherwise chaotic and competitive. People who stay obsessed with results tend to live on emotional extremes, high highs when things go well, crushing lows when they don't. People who stay obsessed with the work experience something steadier. Their confidence grows slowly, quietly, and sustainably. They don't need constant reassurance because their identity isn't tied to a scoreboard. It's tied to their standards, and here's the most important part. When enough people focus on the work, cultures change, teams become healthier, organizations become more trustworthy, leadership becomes more human. Because when effort, care, and consistency are valued over quick wins, people feel safe to do their best work. And when people feel safe, performance doesn't just improve, it endures. So if you're looking for progress, don't stare at the horizon waiting for proof. Look at your habits, look at your effort, look at how you treat the process on ordinary days. Because ordinary days, handled with excellence, are what quietly create extraordinary results. At some point, everyone who is driven faces the same question, even if they never say it out loud: how long is this going to take? It's a natural question, but it's also a dangerous one. Because the moment we tie our commitment to a timeline, we stop committing to the work itself. We start negotiating with the process, and the work doesn't respond well to negotiation. The work asks for presence, not prediction. It asks for attention, not anxiety. Results belong to the future, but the work belongs to now. When people become obsessed with timelines and outcomes, they often rush past the very moments that are meant to teach them. They want the reward without the refinement, but refinement only happens when you stay long enough to be shaped by what you're doing. There's a difference between ambition and impatience. Ambition is driven by purpose. Impatience is driven by ego. Ambition says, this matters and I'm willing to do the work. Impatience says, I deserve this and I want it now. One builds resilience, the other creates frustration. When you obsess over results, impatience quietly takes control. When you obsess over the work, ambition stays clean and focused. The work has a way of revealing who we really are, not on our best days, but on the difficult ones. On the days when progress feels slow, on the days when effort goes unnoticed, on the days when doubt shows up uninvited. Obsession with results makes those days feel pointless. Obsession with the work gives those days meaning. Because even when nothing seems to change on the outside, something is always changing on the inside. There is also humility in committing to the work. It requires accepting that you don't know everything yet, that you have more to learn, that improvement is always possible. Results-driven thinking often resists humility because it wants certainty. It wants guarantees, but the work doesn't offer guarantees. It offers growth, and growth requires patience, curiosity, and the willingness to be uncomfortable. People who stay focused on the work tend to develop better judgment over time. They don't just know what to do, they know why they're doing it. That depth of understanding can't be rushed. It comes from repetition, reflection, and refinement. It comes from paying attention to what works, what doesn't, and why. This is the kind of wisdom that no shortcut can deliver. Obsession with results can also distort how we define success. It turns success into a finish line, something you cross once and then defend. But when success is defined by the quality of your work, it becomes a practice. Something you return to daily, something that evolves as you evolve. That definition is far more sustainable because it doesn't rely on staying ahead of others. It relies on staying true to your standards. There is a quiet confidence that grows in people who commit deeply to the work. They don't panic when things slow down. They don't overreact to small wins or losses. They understand that momentum is built gradually, not dramatically. This steadiness makes them trustworthy in uncertain environments. When others are distracted by noise, they remain grounded in process. The work also teaches patience in a world that rewards speed. Speed has its place, but without direction, speed only gets you lost faster. Obsession with the work forces you to slow down enough to aim correctly, to ask better questions, to build things that last, and things that last are rarely built in a hurry. If you're feeling pressure to prove something, pause and return to the work. If you're feeling discouraged by the lack of recognition, return to the work. If you're tempted to quit because the results aren't visible yet, return to the work, not as punishment, but as grounding. Because the work is where your control lives, it's where your growth happens, it's where meaning is created. In the end, results will come and go, they always do. Markets change, trends shift, attention moves on. But the person you become through committing to the work, that stays, and that person is capable of creating results again and again, without needing to chase them. There is a moment in every long journey when enthusiasm fades and discipline is all that remains. The early excitement is gone, the novelty has worn off, and this is usually the moment people start questioning whether the work is worth it. They look around, they look ahead, and they wonder if anyone even notices. This is where obsession with results becomes dangerous, because when the emotional reward disappears, so does the motivation. But obsession with the work survives this moment. In fact, it's strengthened by it. The work doesn't ask you how you feel, it asks you who you are. When identity is tied to outcomes, confidence rises and falls with performance. But when identity is tied to standards, confidence becomes stable. You no longer show up to win approval, you show up because this is how you do things. That internal consistency becomes a quiet form of leadership, whether you hold a title or not. Consistency is not about doing something perfectly every day. It's about doing it honestly. There will be days when energy is low and focus is scattered. Obsession with results says those days don't count. Obsession with the work says those days matter most, because showing up imperfectly but sincerely builds resilience. It teaches you to rely on commitment rather than mood. There is also courage hidden in staying committed to the work. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like continuing without certainty, like doing the right thing without immediate reward, like refusing to compromise values for faster outcomes, results. Focused thinking often pressures people to bend their principles to keep up. Work. Focused thinking strengthens principles because it values how things are done, not just what is achieved. The work has a way of aligning people with purpose. Not the dramatic, life-changing kind that arrives in a single moment, but the quieter kind that develops over time. Purpose grows when effort is connected to service, when what you do helps others in some meaningful way. Results might tell you that you succeeded. Purpose tells you that you mattered, and purpose is what keeps people going when success alone is not enough. When you stop chasing results, you also stop needing constant reassurance. You no longer require external validation to stay engaged. You measure success internally. Did I act with integrity? Did I give my best? Did I improve even slightly? These questions create a sense of progress that doesn't depend on recognition. And that independence is deeply empowering. People who focus on the work tend to become anchors in uncertain times. While others panic over numbers and forecasts, they return to fundamentals. They ask what can be done today with care and clarity. This grounded approach reduces noise and builds trust. It signals reliability, and reliability over time becomes influence. Obsession with results can also isolate people. It turns colleagues into competitors and collaboration into comparison. But obsession with the work invites cooperation. When the shared goal is excellence, not ego, people support each other's growth. They exchange ideas, they raise standards together, and environments like that don't just perform better, they feel better to be part of. The irony is that when people stop obsessing over results, results often improve. Not immediately, not magically, but sustainably. Because systems improve, processes strengthen. People grow, and strong systems, supported by capable people, naturally produce better outcomes over time. So if you find yourself tired, discouraged, or questioning the point of it all, don't look for a new goal. Look for a deeper commitment to the work. Reconnect with why it matters. Recommit to doing it well, especially when it's hard. Because the work is not just a path to results, it is a path to becoming someone you respect. Eventually, there comes a stage where people stop asking how to succeed and start wondering how to sustain. The initial hunger has been satisfied, at least partially. Some results have shown up. Progress is visible, and this is where another trap appears. The temptation is to protect the outcome instead of continuing to honor the work. The focus subtly shifts from building to maintaining, from learning to defending, and without realizing it, growth slows. The work does not end when results arrive. In many ways, that is when the real work begins. Because results change expectations, they raise the bar, they invite scrutiny, and if your confidence was built only on outcomes, pressure begins to feel threatening. But if your confidence was built on process, pressure feels familiar. It feels like work, something you already know how to handle. People who stay obsessed with the work don't cling to past wins. They respect them, but they don't rely on them. They understand that yesterday's success does not do today's work. Every day asks for fresh effort, fresh attention, fresh humility. This mindset keeps them adaptable in environments that are constantly changing. There is also a deep sense of responsibility that comes with focusing on the work. When people depend on you, when your actions affect others, shortcuts are no longer tempting. Obsession with results might justify cutting corners for speed or recognition. Obsession with the work refuses to do so because it understands the cost. It understands that how something is done matters just as much as what is achieved. Sustainability is built on rhythm, not intensity. People burn out not because they care too much, but because they care without structure. The work teaches you to pace yourself, to respect rest as part of performance, to build routines that support long-term excellence. Results. Focused thinking often celebrates overexertion. Work. Focused thinking values endurance. Over time, people who commit to the work develop a strong internal compass. They don't need constant direction. They don't wait to be told what to do, they take ownership. This sense of ownership creates leaders at every level, not because of authority, but because of reliability. Others trust them not for their titles, but for their consistency. There is also wisdom in understanding that not all results are visible. Some of the most important outcomes never appear on a chart. Confidence, capability, trust, culture, these are built slowly through countless small actions done with care. You can't rush them, you can't fake them, but once they exist, they change everything. When people measure themselves only by visible success, they miss these deeper results. They undervalue the quiet impact of their effort. But when they focus on the work, they begin to notice these subtler forms of progress. They see relationships strengthen. They see judgment improve. They see their influence grow, not through force, but through example. The work also keeps people grounded as they grow. Success has a way of distorting perspective. It can create distance. It can inflate ego. Returning to the work keeps humility intact. It reminds you that you are still learning, that you are still improving, that nothing is guaranteed, and humility, paired with competence, is a powerful combination. In the long run, obsession with the work creates something far more valuable than short-term success. It creates legacy, not the kind measured in awards or headlines, but the kind measured in people influenced, standards raised, and values preserved. Legacy is built slowly, through everyday choices that reflect who you are and what you believe. So when the noise grows louder, when expectations rise, when the pressure to perform increases, return to the work. Not because it's easy, but because it's steady. Not because it's glamorous, but because it's honest. Because the work will never betray you, results will come and go, but the discipline, integrity, and purpose built through the work will carry you forward, again and again,